This story was submitted by Paul. A bit of background. I'm a 22-year-old male, large in size, 6'2", and with a football player's kind of build, though I live on video games. I have no idea how to fight, and I never carry a weapon on me. My size kind of always just kept me safe. I've always been a nice guy to just about everyone I've met, even people I don't know. I work at Walmart and was getting a Monster energy drink out of the usual cooler at the front, which is in a line that is basically always packed full. This has always been a daily routine for me, for when I work overnight shifts. I looked over and saw there were none of the kind I liked, and all of a sudden 2 of the guys in line looked over at me and got out of line. They looked really dirty and definitely acted like they were on drugs. They proceeded to ask me what I was looking for, and I said, "A Monster." And they asked if I could buy them one. I responded with a nervous laugh. They then started asking me personal stuff, like what time I work, when do I get off, if I could buy them other things, etc. Stupidly, I answered some of these correctly. This proceeded until I finally found a Monster. I thought they would finally leave me alone and keep walking when I went to get one, but no. They just waited for me. I checked out, with them literally next to me over my shoulder the whole time, still asking if I could buy them stuff, while staring down my wallet at my card while taking it out. I paid for everything, having to tell them no, and that I'm trying not to spend more money. I started walking for the door, and they were still following me. Now, when I say following, I literally mean one of them is always at my right and one at my left, or in front and behind, not even 2 feet away. I pretended to check my phone and acted like I was calling someone. They continued outside and went into the mall and sat on the benches that faced towards the entrance of the store. My store in particular is attached to a mall. I waited for a solid 15 minutes, and when I went to check, they were still sitting there, staring at the entrance as if waiting for me. When I tried to walk out, they stood up, so I immediately went back inside, and they sat back down. At this point, I realized that they literally had nothing on them to buy when they were originally standing in line. Why were they even in line if they had no money or nothing to buy in the first place? Luckily, I ended up catching a coworker on their way out. I explained the whole situation to them, and they agreed to give me a ride home. When I went back out with one of my coworkers, one of the 2 guys was nowhere to be found, while the other guy just watched me leave, seeming irritated. I thought I saw the missing guy on our way out, at the corner where I would have turned to go home. If you were wondering why I didn't just take my own car, well, I live only a 20-minute walk away, so I thought it impractical to drive there every day and waste gas. I'm so glad my coworker was still there to give me a ride, and I'm honestly horrified to think of what could have happened. I was nice to them the entire time, and everyone I told this to kept telling me I should have told them to screw off, or say something like, "I'm not your mother, I'm not buying you anything." I have no idea if that would have helped or not, but I really hope that they don't come back tomorrow now that they know when I get off. I realize now that if it continues, I obviously should call the police, or at least tell management so they can watch them. I watch scary stories on YouTube at least 6 hours a day while working instead of listening to music. And yet somehow, when I saw myself sitting inside of a similar situation to the stories I had listened to for the past month every single day, I had no idea what to do. I just couldn't believe that this kind of stuff could actually happen to me. This story was submitted by Kate. A few years ago, when I was 18, I was staying with my father. We lived in a typical small town where everybody knows one another, saving a few faces. I'll admit, I rarely got out, and I was alright with that. I enjoyed the solitary. At the time, I was good friends with this one girl who lived a few blocks up from myself. She had mentioned that I should hang out with her and her brother's friend, and for some reason, I agreed. When we all had met up, I noticed her brother's friend, let's call him Jack, and something was unsettling about him. Regardless, I didn't want to offend my friend, so I invited them both inside of my house. Out of habit, I made a solid effort to warn the two about my cat, Max. He usually hated visitors and would always attempt to claw or bite them. However, this time, he was calm enough so the two of them could pet him. I couldn't place it, but I was generally uneasy. But we had gotten to know one another, and I soon began to feel ashamed of myself for being so judgmental. Jack had made a solid effort to constantly stay in contact for an entire week. He texted me non-stop, called me in the middle of the night, and even tried contacting me through friends. I suddenly realized that this kid wasn't all there in the head. Finally, I gathered the courage to tell him I didn't want to stay in contact, and lied by saying I was too busy to hang out. Jack just wouldn't have that. One afternoon, my father was away at work, and I was alone in my house, when my phone suddenly went off. I glanced at the screen to see Jack had texted me, saying something like, "We can work this out. I need a friend. I want you." I shook my head and chose to ignore them. I then, for whatever reason, headed downstairs, where I could hear the familiar noise of our old wooden back door shaking madly. I rushed over to our window, which had a clear view of the porch, and there was Jack, sobbing madly and attempting to get in my house. He was furiously turning the doorknob and ramming his shoulder as hard as he could into the old door. As he was doing this, he began to shout, "Your cat likes me. Why can't you?" I was terrified, and oddly enough, my first thought was not to call 911. My father and I are gun enthusiasts and go target shooting religiously. My initial reaction was to grab his Glock above the stove. Taking in a deep breath, I nervously grabbed the door and flung it open. I flicked the laser on the gun and aimed right towards Jack. He was sobbing profusely until he saw the gun. He quickly fled the porch, and I haven't had an issue since. I wasn't about to have some creep break into my home and not defend myself. This story was submitted by Skwig. I'm a female in my early 30s, and I suffer from a myriad of health problems, and as a result, spend a lot of time in emergency rooms. I've seen and heard all kinds of crazy things over the years, but just a few days ago, I had my most bizarre experience yet. It was about 2 a.m. on a Friday night. Always the craziest night to have to go to an ER, but it was quiet for the most part. I was recovering from some kind of allergic reaction and was sitting in my room for the 30 through 45 minutes so the doctor could monitor my progress. I was starting to feel a lot better, relatively, but I was tired and miserable and full of antihistamines, so I wanted to go home. Sometimes I like to strike up conversations through the curtains with the people around me. For one, it passes the time, and for another, you meet some interesting people and hear some even more interesting stories. I had people on either side of me, but neither were in much condition to talk. The guy on my right had come in with some kind of poison ivy rash and was snoozing from all the Benadryl they gave him, and the woman on my left was in severe pain and being doped up with some heavy-duty painkillers. Besides, there was a guy in the room with her, and they seemed to be having a conversation of their own. I'm not one for eavesdropping, but I noticed their quiet talking had become more heated, and the guy was raising his voice the more they talked, and I could tell he was getting angry. "But I need that money," he hissed. "I don't have it. All I have is $60, and I need that for my kids," she said slowly. "Plus, Grandma needs Depends, and—" "You don't understand." His voice had taken a considerably dark turn. "I bought the pre-workout supplements, and what is the fucking point of having those if I don't have the supplements I need?" Already my hackles were raising, but boy did they go up when I heard that. Was this guy really needling his sick girlfriend for bodybuilding crap? At first I didn't think I heard it right, so I kept on listening. "I don't know what to tell you. I just don't have the money," she said. I heard him stand up quickly, and I almost jumped out of my bed right along with him. I was afraid he was going to hurt this woman. "Give me the money you have," he growled. "You give it to me now. I need it. I need those supplements. You're just a selfish bitch. You know that? You get to sit here and have all these good drugs handed to you for free. Why the fuck did I spend all of my money on pre-workout supplements if I can't have the other ones? You're fucking stupid. You know that?" I was on the verge of calling out for someone. This was seriously starting to make me anxious. I heard some rustling around, and then I saw the guy storm out of the woman's room and make a beeline for the exit. I didn't get a great look at him, just his general height and what he was wearing, but he seemed really agitated. I heard the woman sigh and go, "That fucker, he just took it," which led me to believe that he'd taken the money from her purse and bolted. I wanted to ask her if she was okay. My instinct is to comfort people in situations like that. I even wanted to call a nurse to come over and talk to her about it. Turns out I didn't have to. One came in to ask if she needed help. She seemed disinterested, even alarmed about the notion of calling the cops, and she said she'd deal with it when she was out of the hospital. I had another 20 minutes to wait, which I did in silence. I listened for any sign of life beside me, and other than some sighing and moaning about her pain, she didn't have anything to say. I wanted to be like, "Lady, fuck that guy. Get away from him if you can." But I just kept my mouth shut. Something in my gut was telling me to leave it alone. This story is already really weird, but it gets even stranger. After they'd cut me loose, I collected my father from the waiting room. I relayed to him the story about the weird guy and his temper tantrum over the workout supplements. Wait, was he wearing a black backwards baseball cap and a white t-shirt? Kinda tall and skinny? Yeah, he was. Did you see him? My dad's eyes went wide, and he was quiet for a moment. Yeah, he stormed out of the waiting area and went outside. I thought he left, but a few minutes later he came by the window and started tapping on the glass, trying to get my attention. What did he want? A cigarette or something? I asked. No. He was showing me his phone, pointing at the screen, my dad replied, sounding a bit bewildered at what he was about to describe to me. I looked at it, and it was a weird picture of a cartoon dog burying a bone. I looked up at him like he was fucking crazy, but his eyes were way huge, and he was grinning wildly. Slowly and deliberately, he pointed to the picture of the dog, then to himself, and then he disappeared into the night. All I could say was, wow. I already had my suspicions before I left the ER, but after what my dad told me, I'm pretty sure workout supplements was a kind of code for methamphetamine. This story was submitted by Constance. To start this off, I will introduce myself. I am a 34-year-old woman, but at the time this occurred, I was around 32, so 2 years ago. I was engaged to my now husband, and we were living in a 2-bedroom apartment at the time. Our apartment was in the back of the complex, like the very end of it, and faced a side road, and beyond that was just a field. So if you look through the sliding glass door of our living room, you could see the road and the field. Late at night, there is virtually no traffic on this road. It was dark, but there is a yellowish street lamp to provide some light. I can't remember if it was a Friday or Saturday night, but my fiancé had already gone to bed, and I had decided to stay up and lie on the couch. I had all the lights off, curled up with a blanket and pillow, and watched a Kurt Russell movie called Breakdown. It was very late, or early in the morning I should say, around 3 or 4 a.m. Halfway through the movie, I fell asleep on the couch. Before I go further, my couch was against the wall, facing our television. To the left of the couch was a sliding glass door that we always kept locked. The windows were covered with long blinds that had been there when we moved in. A few of the blinds had broken off, so it left about 2 inches that had not been hidden by the blinds. So I awake to the movie almost being over, still kinda sleepy and in a haze. And I don't know why, but I looked towards the window and got a weird feeling. Usually I can see the glow from the lamp outside, but this time I did not, like something was blocking the light. I continued staring, and it looked like I could see the outline of someone there. I lied back down in fear, and waited a good bit before I got brave enough to peer my head up over the arm of the couch to take another look. Nothing was there. I didn't see an outline anymore, and I could see the light outside. I started to second guess what I had seen, thinking maybe my eyes had been playing tricks on me because I was still quite sleepy. I continued to peer over the arm of the couch for maybe a minute, then my doubts having seen something vanished. I caught sight of a pair of black boots walking past my sliding doors. It was at that moment that I was truly scared. I ducked my head down and lied there on the couch completely still, my heart pounding. I was afraid to move, afraid to do anything. I didn't want him knowing that I knew he was there. I wanted to get up and alert my fiancé, who was sleeping in the next room, but could not bring myself to do it. I lay motionless for what seemed like forever, and finally got the courage to peek up. Seeing nothing, I jumped off of the couch and also turned off the television so it would be harder for whoever was out there to see anything inside. I woke my fiancé, telling him someone was outside of our apartment and had been watching me sleep. He gets up, and we both go out into the living room. He pushed some of the blinds aside to peer out of the door, and I asked him if he saw anyone, and he said no. I told him someone was out there, so he decides to call the police, while I just stand there at the door, staring at the blinds, just waiting for him to come back. He gets off the phone with the police, and said they told him they'd send someone over to patrol the area. That's when I see a faint shadow spread over the blinds, and I say, "There he is! He's right there!" My fiancé comes over quickly and pulls a handful of blinds back so he could see clearly whoever was out there. He's a pretty big guy. I did not see the man that was outside our sliding door. I was too afraid to look at him. I just couldn't. But my fiancé saw him. He let go of the blinds and stepped back. I asked him, "Was someone out there?" And he said, "Yes." I asked him what he looked like, and my fiance said he was wearing a hoodie and black pants, had dark hair, and younger looking, and when the guy saw him, he ran off. My fiance went back to sleep after that. I tried to sleep as well, but couldn't. I was terrified. What if he was still out there? The morning after this occurred, I went to the landlord and requested that they replace the blinds, that some of the spindles had came off. For the next 6 months we lived there, I was really paranoid. I always watched my back going in and out of the apartment. At night, sometimes I'd have to go out and walk my dog, and there would be a guy walking on that road with black boots, and I'd hurry back inside thinking it could be him. I started having night terrors, but they eventually stopped when we ended up buying a house and moved out. It still frightens me to this day. How long had he been standing there watching me? What were his intentions? To rob me, rape me, or kill me? What would have happened if my fiance hadn't scared him off? I don't want to know. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you smash that like button. It lets me know that you actually cared about me. Nah, I pretty much figure if you watch the video, you probably care about me. It lets me know that you guys support me a little bit more, you know what I'm saying? And it kind of actually helps me out in the search results, which in turn helps the channel grow, which in turn helps me get more stories, which in turn helps you listen to more stories, which in turn makes everything a win-win situation. So how about you hit that like button? How about you share it a little bit, and let's get the word out, and let's get some more stories coming in. That's what I'm talking about, baby, yeah. So, before I start off on my thoughts, big thank you to everyone submitting their stories. Truly, this channel would not be where it is without all of you guys. I just kind of go through, edit, and then narrate them so you can listen to them. But I wouldn't have anything to narrate if you wouldn't send them in. So a huge thank you to everyone. And if you would like a chance to have your story featured, make sure you look in the description to find out the information on how to submit them. So in the first story, luckily you were able to notice that you might be getting yourself into a situation. And luckily you had a fellow employee who happened to be getting off work at the same time. Very smart of you to not even try to go outside. Because yeah, you may be a big dude, but you never know what someone's got in their pocket, or up their sleeves, literally. Thankfully you were able to get a ride home, and never had to deal with them. Now for the second story, I don't blame you for not calling the cops. If I had my dad's Glock right there with me, I'd probably answer the door with that on him as well. That would probably work a little better than the officers coming by saying, "Hey, don't go over there." He gets mad, comes back. Well, at least now he knows you've got a gun, and he's not going to be coming back anymore. I'm glad you kept your cool, and were able to handle the situation on your own. Sometimes all it takes is putting a little fear in someone to let them get the hint to back off. Now for the third story. I agree with you that that was probably a code word for methamphetamine. Or he was just looking for some steroids. Supposedly that's supposed to mess with your attitude as well. Never messed with steroids, wouldn't be able to tell you. But obviously something was off with that guy. It's unfortunate that the woman wouldn't call the cops on him, but she's probably used to it and probably went back to the same lifestyle. Which is a scary story all in its own. And I'm still a little lost on why he would be pointing at a dog burying a bone. But I'm probably also not in the same mind state that he was. Now for the last story. Thankfully your significant other was there and was able to see the person you were talking about. Otherwise he might have just said it was your imagination. Hopefully they catch the dude. And yeah, it's probably best we don't know what he wanted to do, because it was probably nothing that we really wanted to ever see happen in the first place. I don't think anyone has good intentions when they're there at 3 or 4 in the morning and they're a stranger just standing at your back door, dressed all in black. Very smart decision to just pretend like you didn't see him. Maybe it would have enticed him to come in a little quicker. Who knows? Regardless, I'm happy you're safe, and at least you moved out of the location. I'd like to thank everyone sending in their stories, and once again, if you would like a chance to be featured in a video, make sure you check the description. I'll catch you guys in the next video, and just remember, it's always scarier if it's true.